Well, after a couple weeks of ministry, I wanted to give you guys an update on all those who supported me, everyone who was just with me on this journey, was praying for me. Thank you guys so much. Here's just from beginning to end, pretty much a rundown of all the ministry that we did. Well, to start my trip, I had 27 hours of travel in the air, at least, covering 4 flights. So that was from Denver to Chicago to Brussels to Zurich to Nairobi. And so I didn't end up actually getting to my room. I think all in all, it was about something like 31 hours of travel the first day. So it was a very first long day. I left June 18th and got back July 7th. And when I got to the airport, the first thing that I saw in my bag was this little note from my wife, Kimia, who just told me that she misses me and proud of me. And I missed her enough leaving her. And then finding that note was just really sweet. I almost missed my flight from Chicago to Brussels, so that was my second flight that I was on. There was an issue with one of my tickets or the application I was using for the airlines, and so I just made it to get on the plane as they were calling last call and like literally closing the door. So that was a really close call, but God helped me get on the plane. Then I also enjoyed some Swiss chocolate. To be honest, it tasted exactly like any other chocolate pretty much I've ever had, but it was Swiss, so it was special, and I was able to enjoy that. Then on my last flight from Zurich to Nairobi, I was somehow able to be upgraded to business, business class, or I don't know exactly what it's called. It'd be just under first class, but as you can see, the seats were really nice and big, and I was able to enjoy a nice meal with it as well. And so that was a huge blessing. That was my longest flight, so to be able to stretch out was great. And then along the way, I met this guy, Fred. He was sitting next to me, and we enjoyed about half the time. I think we were talking about life and different things, and it came up about me going on this mission trip to Kenya, and I got to share the gospel with this man for a few hours. And it was great, open conversation, different thoughts, perspectives, things we agreed on, things we disagreed on. But the thing I was really trying to encourage this man to think about was the fact that, sure, there might be some things going on in his life that he loves and desires and doesn't want to put off currently, but that when we come to Christ, it is not one sin in particular that holds us back from Christ, but it is our entire self we bring to Christ as a sacrifice. So when I first got to the hotel room after about 30 hours of traveling, I was tired, but not exhausted. I really wasn't overly tired. I just remember getting into my room and seeing the bathroom and the bed, and then the bug net around for the mosquitoes, and I was just feeling okay. I'm in Kenya, and it took me a night to really get used to that. But then after that, I slept pretty well, pretty much the entire trip, whether I was here at this place or at the other place I'll show you soon. But next day, bright and early, I think got about 4 hours worth of sleep, pretty much had a little nap. I woke up and I did a safari for the first Saturday that I was there. And we went out, we stayed out all day. I stayed up all day. I was pretty tired, but after that, the jet lag kind of didn't really have it after the first day. I mean, I was tired, but then that was about it. I really enjoyed seeing God's creation here. But I did not realize that it was going to be actually cold in Kenya, basically on the equator. And we went out for the safari, and it was pretty cold. I think it was about 55 degrees. And I didn't know any better, so I was just in a t-shirt and jeans or long pants. And it warmed up a little bit in the afternoon to probably about 65, maybe 70. But when we were on the safari, we had the top open, as you could see, and we were just driving around. And so there's a lot of air coming through. So it was a little bit cold, but it was such an awesome time. The safari is just awesome. I loved it. We were able to see some elephants. We were able to see some giraffes, some lions, antelopes, ostriches, baboons. So that was a great time. Really enjoyed seeing God's creation here. And then once the team was fully assembled, everyone got back to the hotel. We headed up from Nairobi to Tharaka Nithi. It was about a 5-hour, 6-hour drive. We made some stops along the way. It was a pretty good drive. Saw some interesting things along the way. Interesting cars on the road. The architecture is pretty interesting, in that a lot of things are in the middle of being built, similar to America. Buildings are going up often, but just their codes for construction are a bit different here. Another thing we got to enjoy was, well, I don't know if I wouldn't say enjoy, but using a squatty potty. By God's grace, I was just, throughout the entire trip, just doing a number one in the squatty potty, and I was able to use a Western toilet back at the house for the rest of the trip. So that was amazing. That was a gift, but that is what some of the rest of the world is using to go to the bathroom, is that squatty potty. So then we stopped at the equator. That was really cool. There was this guy who showed us this. I thought this was a myth. I didn't actually know that this was real, but apparently when you go to, 20 feet north and 20 feet south of the equator, you can see a change in the direction of the water flow, and this man demonstrated for us. And then there we were at the equator. You could see us in front of the sign. So from left to right, this is pretty much the whole team, including the drivers. So the man to the left is Rob Adams. He is a ruling elder in the PCA, and pretty much everyone in this picture is in the PCA except our driver. There I am sitting down to the left, and then that gentleman next to me, he is one of the drivers who was driving us from Nairobi to Tharaka-Nithi throughout our time. We just made that travel twice, obviously. And then in the back, we have Scott Parsons. He was one of the main teachers for the first 2 days, and I'll explain that more in a minute, but he did a lot of the foundational teaching. In front of him is Bee and her friend Mana. They are college students at Covenant College, and they were doing some research to see if there could be any connection between Covenant College and the work that we're doing here in Kenya, and just what that would look like. So they were very busy throughout these 2 weeks that we were here, visiting schools, talking and interviewing pastors, seeing what would work, what wouldn't work, and just kind of basically gathering information. So they were just as busy as the rest of the team. And then that gentleman in the back is Daniel Gilchrist. He was the one who set up this whole trip. He is the leader and the coordinator for the group that goes to this area in Kenya each year. And then the couple to the right, Julie and Mitch Brown. They are, interestingly enough, Mitch grew up in Kenya as a missionary kid, and so he has a great heart for the Kenya people. He has a good understanding for them and how they think and how they work, and I was able to learn a lot from him, and even from his wife, Julie, who had a lot of great things to say, a lot of encouraging things to say to the group and to the people that they were teaching as well. And then finally is Brian Chappell. If you're in the Reformed world, you probably have heard of him or know of him. One of the books that we had to read during seminary was Christ-Centered Preaching, and that's the book that he was covering during our trip out as we were educating and sharing some of the helpful insights from his book with these men in Kenya. But then we finally arrived at the home of the bishop, Bishop Douglas of the Methodist Church, and that's where we stayed for 2 weeks. So again, very Western, Americanized, really blessed to have a home like this to stay in. I talked to Daniel, the leader of this group, and he was saying that a lot of the other trips that he's been on, or the other areas, they just simply stay at a hotel during their stay. So the fact that we were able to stay at someone's home, the bishop who's leading the group of churches here in Kenya, was just a huge blessing. We started each morning doing morning devotionals. So Daniel would be giving 5-10 minute encouragement from God's word, and heavily fixated on something he repeated often, is that God is already at work in Kenya, and we are simply joining in the work that God is already doing. So it's this. He was really trying to make clear this idea that we're not coming here to be saviors, and we were coming alongside of them to help them. And so this is us singing a hymn as we would sing at the end of each of our times in the morning. He sets the prisoners free. His blood can make the foulest clean. So here we are having our first week of teaching. So the first week was really teaching us, educating them on how to build a Christ-centered sermon. That was the whole concept of the first week. And then the second week, we were helping someone, or people that we call Timothys, who are people who are already stationed over there, already leading, and they led their groups, and we kind of helped them where needed. We were there for encouragement, to answer questions. You see this man, Reverend Douglas. He is the bishop of the Methodist Church, and he is just introducing us for the weekend. He's introducing the team. This was a great man. Highly respect this man. Learned a lot from him. Was really encouraged by the time I was able to spend with him. And what makes ELI so unique of all of the kind of mission sending groups that at least I've been exposed to is that they're really not trying to come in. We're really not trying to come in and try to say, hey, you're doing everything wrong. Let us show you how to do it right. It's more, we're asking the question, what are you doing currently? How is God working in your midst? And how can we come alongside of you guys to just continue to strengthen you and encourage you so that you would continue to bless and strengthen your people? That model is a bit different than the broad missions philosophy, which is more we come in, fix a problem, and then we leave. But then when we leave, the people necessarily aren't always better off as far as long-term. So ELI is very focused on long-term community and connection here, partnership. This is, I think, the 5th or 6th time that Daniel has been out to visit this location. And so there's 5 or 6 years of ongoing education that doesn't just stop with this weekend, but it goes on multiple times throughout the year. Daniel and others are teaching these leaders, and they'll continue to gather together. So the first 2 days of this first week, Monday and Tuesday, you had Brian Chappell and Scott Parsons. They were covering the foundations of Christ-centered preaching. So they were kind of covering all of the basics of what are we doing when we're preaching? How do we even preach Christ? How to form a sermon so that we're not just simply saying, hey, you need to be like David, you need to be courageous, but how is that story of David and Goliath telling the redemptive story about how God is at work and rescuing his people, and how is it pointing us to Christ rather than just pointing us to be more like a fallen man, David, who went on to commit murder and adultery and many other sins. So we're trying to always show, we're trying to point people to Christ, not just to interesting message. And then Wednesday to Friday that first week, we all split off into meet separately with groups. So we were in about 3 or 4 different locations during that week, all separately. And so it was myself and Rob who were meeting with this one group of pastors who came from Pentecostal churches, Methodist churches, some non-denominational churches, just all different kinds. And it was amazing to see them all work together as well as they did. How well they just simply loved each other. They would do this thing, which I love the word that they used. They would say at the start of everything that we were doing, as we just came into the room, they would say, all right, let's warm up. And they would sing a song or two, nothing long, about 5-7 minutes. And it would just be us praising the Lord together. But I just loved that concept of warming up, because it's so true when we just gather together. And we want to be stirred up to have more love and desire for the Lord, but just because of life and different things, we're just not. But they make it a point to say, let's warm up our hearts to the Lord by worshiping him, and then we will pray, and then we will learn from what's being taught. For meals, pretty much lunch was pretty similar each day. We would have rice, a meat of some kind, usually goat. It was interesting how they prepared the goat, because they would leave all the bones and tendons and fat and just everything in with the goat. So you had to be really careful when you ate, not to crack a tooth in half, but the food was pretty good. They would serve cabbage with it and a kind of broth, and usually some kind of fruit like a banana or watermelon. So really like good diet for the most part, if you think about it. Just good protein, less protein than we're used to, high amount of carbs. You have to remember that a lot of these people are walking to and from places every day. Most of them do not have cars, even the pastors. The vast majority came in on motorcycles. You'd have 2 or 3, sometimes 4 on a motorcycle coming in together. At breakfast at Douglas's house, we would be having a meal that's you could see there, just it's good. Samosas, eggs, some beans often, different kind of pancake style food, and some fruit. So that was a really good way to start the day. And then usually when we got to the centers, we would have something called mandazi and chai tea. So the mandazi is pretty much like a donut without the glaze, without all the sugar on top of it. It's a lightly sweet fried dough, and on the inside it's really soft and fluffy. And then in the evenings, that was where we had probably the most variety, but still similar to our lunches. As you could see, some kind of something like a carb or rice, some French fries. We had probably a chicken and goat there at the house. So after the first 2 days of the first week, then we moved on to actually helping the pastors Wednesday to Friday start to develop tangibly a sermon that they would preach to their congregations the following Lord's Day. So pretty much we were going through the process of how you prepare a sermon, how you get the skeleton with it, how you put all the parts and the ligaments together. And so we'd help them find a theme. We focused on something called the fallen condition focus. What that means is we're trying to help them see that every passage has a fallen condition focus, meaning it has something that it's a weakness in man or sin in man. And then we're trying to contrast that, and we're trying to solve that problem with the grace of God. How is God's character being shown? How is God the hero of this passage?
And with the Spirit's help, I won't go on stealing. But when I do, and I put this book bag back on, and okay, I lied, I cheated, I stole in some way, you have the responsibility as the preacher. Oh, what a blessed gift you have to be able to say, take off the bag. Jesus was perfect for you. He took the rocks that are in this bag so you could go on and be free. So this is why preaching Christ is everything in your preaching. It's the most important thing.
Then once we help them see that, we'd help them make some cohesive points that connected together to a main proposition. Some of them are used to just simply having even no points at all, no real solid structure that we would be used to. And they would be making all of these good and true statements, but they wouldn't always be connected together. And when you're hearing that as an audience, you're walking away and you're not exactly sure what was being shared. And then after we talked about that, we would talk about how to proclaim Christ specifically from the passage, where the grace of God is being shown, and then including some illustrations and applications to really bring it home to the group. We'd be meeting at churches, and often with a lot of these churches, there's schools connected with them. So when we're doing our pastoral work during the day, there's often kids running around in the afternoon. And so this is some pictures of me interacting with the kids. They don't really ever see any white people, so this is like a really interesting time for them, almost like you're a celebrity, just because they only see people that look like them, and we just look so different than them. And so just enjoyed seeing and shaking some of their hands and seeing their smiles. It was just really sweet. And then the last Friday of the first week was the Kenyan naming ceremony. That was a really, that was such a sweet time. It was fun. There was some porridge that I had to eat, or rather drink, but that was a sweet time. They gave me the name Tom Morithi, and that was a really, again, really special time. The fact that they would give me that name, what that means is good shepherd. They gave us some gifts as well, some ground nuts, and a huge box of fruit. This next part, but I was able to preach at an East African Pentecostal church. That was a denomination that many of the individuals that are at our training centers were a part of that church and the Methodist church out in East Africa as well. And so those were the main two denominations I believe we interacted with, but there was a host of other ones as well. So it was a great time. It was about a 3-hour service. So it was pretty long, but it was good. The music was incredibly loud. The loudest music I think I've ever heard in my life. And I've been to shows, I've been a touring musician. This was so loud. I had to cover my ears because it was hurting my ears. But all that to say, worship, I think, at the beginning was about an hour and 15 minutes. You could tell that the people really loved the Lord. Interestingly enough, the congregation was about 80% women and 20% men. It seems to be somewhat common, not in every church, but in a lot of these churches, a lot more women are working in the church. That's why I think you see a lot more female leaders and pastors here in Kenya than we might see in America. And then we got into the second week. So the second week, it was a bit different. This is where we are really just encouraging and observing the teachers already that are already stationed there. So we met on the first day of the week, Monday. We gathered together to review all the material that they were going to be covering in their cohorts, and it was great. We got to answer questions that they had. We got to continue to talk about this idea of living a grace-filled life. That's what they were talking about the second week. And, it's so much more powerful for them to hear it in their own language from their own leaders than for us Americans to come in and try to run the show. And that's kind of what we did for the first week, and that was necessary. That was good. A lot of the pastors fully understood what we were saying, some less than others. But we really want the local leaders to be leading where God has already planted and gifted them, and we're just there to support them and encourage them. So that was the second week. Douglas took us to a property and showed us some of the vision that he has for what he plans to do after he steps down from being a bishop. And he'd like to set up this location that you're viewing here as a place where pastors can come to have these retreats, where they can come to continue to get training. And it would be a really good long-term vision for how ELI can continue to prosper in Kenya and bless many different denominations, really anyone who is a Christian, to come and learn and to be educated. A lot of these men and women are not seminary trained. They don't have access to as many good books. And Douglas himself, there's a proverb in Kenya actually, and he said that if you want to hide money from a Kenyan, put it in a book. And so the reason behind that statement is they just don't read that much. It's very oral culture, and so there's just some need of continued education for these men and women as they're leading the church. And so that's his vision for the rest of his time in Kenya, even after he retires. And then we went to this medical center, which I'll just show you parts of it. This is a medical center where a lot of these individuals know ELI. They know a lot of the men and women that work with ELI, and you could see how advanced and some of the tools and equipment that they're using there. And then we had our final goodbye. This was the group of individuals that I really got close with. I spent the whole first week with this group of, and many others, but it was just a blessing to see them. So from the left to the right, you had Sunday, Lucy, Nathan, and Abraham. And man, what humble men that were able to learn and be encouraged and take some corrections and then be able to share. A couple of them shared a sermon that they prepared, or just part of it, Nathan in particular, and he did such a fantastic job, such a humble man. Really thankful for this group of people that I got to know. And all three of them, funny enough, besides the woman Lucy, all three of the men came to teach that day, riding a motorcycle together. And so this is our last group picture that we had together. Not everyone's present, but this was the group that was together for the second week. Scott Parsons and Brian Chappell were only there for the first week. So I'll miss these brothers and sisters very much. And then the last meal that we had was Ethiopian. And boy, let me tell you, Ethiopian food is so good. Never had it before. But as you're looking at this, you could see that all of this food is on, I don't remember what it's called, but it's on this very soft shell, if I could call it that. So what you do is you don't use utensils. You break up the shell that's underneath everything. It's very spongy. And you use that kind of as a fork. So you'll just pinch a little bit of food, and then you'll put the whole piece into your mouth. And so now I've had my 3 flights back home, another 27 hours or so in the air from Nairobi to Brussels to France and to Denver. So this was a great trip. God did some awesome things along the way. It was amazing to see the work that God is doing in countries all throughout the world that are functioning completely different than us. Again, you think about church leaders who aren't seminary trained, who haven't been maybe catechized, or just haven't gone through thorough kind of Presbyterian preparation that we're so used to. And yet God is doing awesome things, carrying them along. And as much knowledge as we have of theology, these individuals have just a different experience, even with the Holy Spirit, and how God is working to sustain and grow them. So if you're interested in supporting me in the future, or just learning more, and maybe you're someone who's equipped to do something like this, to go equip leaders internationally, definitely reach out to me. I'd be happy to share more about this ministry. And then lastly, if you'd also like to support some of the ministry that's going on with Reverend Douglas and his mission and vision for the work of Tharaka Nithi in the future with the plot of land he's developing, our money goes a long way there. Crazy that all of the development, all of the plots, putting up the foundation and the interior, all that for that property I showed you would be about $22,000, which would be basically a shed in America, if that. And so thank you so much for watching and for your support, and may God bless you richly and abundantly for everything you invested in supporting me.